His responsibilities include directing BioPreferred program to increase government and commercial sales of bio-based products, overseeing the department's sustainability programs such as energy and water conservation, and managing USDA's hazardous materials management program, focusing principally on Superfund cleanups. Jeff is an environmental engineer with over 39 years of experience. Prior to joining USDA 8 years ago, he worked for 23 years as an environmental consultant. During this time, he managed a wide variety of projects for both public and private clients, including environmental policy analysis, hazardous waste site investigations, and the conduct of over 700 environmental due diligence audits of manufacturing facilities in most major industrial categories. Jeff began his career with U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, where he developed strategies to implement the Clean Water Act, a legislative proposal for Superfund, and approaches to hazardous waste management regulations under the Resource Conservation and Recovery Act. Please help me welcome Jeff Goodman and Ron Buckhalt.
Good morning. Thank you for coming out this morning, especially this hour. Those of you who know me know that at a business meeting I'm most comfortable wearing a jacket and with my tie pulled all the way up, but since Ron came casual this morning, he asked me as a special favor would I feel comfortable and pull my tie down and take my jacket off. So not a lot of people I do that for, but Ron is one of them.
What he's really trying to say is he's the one who tried to get casual every day during the summer at USDA. It didn't quite happen, but it'd be nice if 97 degree days, 98 degree days, we all dress like that. That's what we've done.
In any event, the way we're going to do this morning, I'm going to turn to Ron and ask him to give you a quick overview of our program. I know that most of the people in the audience know about our program, but to the extent that there are students here or people who may not be familiar, Ron's going to give you a quick 2-minute elevator speech about it.
Okay, Jeff, thanks. Are there any students here? Anybody here? Student? Just out of curiosity? 1, 2, okay, good. So, all right. So the elevator speech. The BioPreferred program is a market development program. In fact, you look at the legislation, it says it's developed bio-based markets. It doesn't say it's BioPreferred. That's a word we made up to kind of tell what we do. The program has 2 distinct parts. We talked about one of them yesterday. You guys saw the presentation Kate Lewis made talking about the consumer-facing side, the USDA certified bio-based product label to give consumer acceptance of bio-based products. And then there's a federal procurement side of the program. We, the USDA, designate categories of bio-based products or not preferred, but mandatory federal purchase of those products in those categories. 97 categories, about 10,000 products. So that's the whole concept. Develop markets, drive markets, to increase jobs, use those agricultural commodities like soybeans, use renewable materials. That's it in a nutshell. Or, Charlie, we can use things like pine chemicals there too. So appreciate you guys being here. You guys from Chemical Society, so yeah.
Okay. You heard Kate yesterday afternoon talk about our label program and give you a little background on the legislation. I think also as we go through a couple of slides here this morning, it will be pretty clear who the communications and marketing expert is and who the environmental boring engineer is. So, but I think I've got all the important information, just not nearly as nicely displayed as Kate was able to do. So, looking forward now to the legislation we got from Congress in February, there are half a dozen or so changes to the BioPreferred program, the most significant of which Kate mentioned yesterday, is opening up the program to traditional bio-based products that had not been eligible for our program earlier on. The legislation principally mentions forest products. However, the way legislation is written, it also is open to other traditional kinds of products, such as wool, leather, cotton, perhaps some others as well. So you can see here that Congress asked us to make the program eligible for those programs those products that apply an innovative approach to any part of the production of those products, through growing, harvesting, sourcing, procuring, et cetera, et cetera. The 2002 Farm Bill had a legislative history that aimed us pretty hard at emerging in new products, and so our regulations governing the program that came out in 2005 had excluded what we then called mature market products, those that had a significant market share before 1972. And so the legislation now gives us a new direction ahead to find ways to include these kinds of products. So we're going to do this in a two-step process. The first step actually began a couple of years ago. We proposed some changes to our program guidelines and some major governing rules for our program back in 2012. And those rules actually were aimed at implementing some of the changes from the 2008 Farm Bill. It took us a while to get them proposed, and then with some of the funding interruptions that Kate talked about yesterday, we still haven't gotten them finalized. But we had a draft of our final rules very early this year before Congress had acted, and we saw the way things were headed. And so in the final rule, what we did, actually at our secretary's suggestion, was we just removed the provision that excluded those traditional products. So we have a rule that's making its way through the bureaucratic processes over at OMB for a Office of Management Budget for a 90-day regulatory review. And it will allow a number of things to happen. And I'll talk a little bit more about those. One thing I do want to mention is that the rule will set up a process whereby we can begin to designate both intermediates and feedstocks, as well as complex assembly products, for that mandatory the mandatory procurement program that Ron was talking about. So when those rules go into effect, we'll begin to jump off in a bunch of new directions, including the forest and other traditional products, as well as bringing new categories of products into our federal mandatory procurement program. The second step will be to propose and then publish rules that will institutionalize the language in the Farm Bill, and that will let us begin to bring new categories of these traditional products into the federal program. So in terms of a timeline, we had, as I mentioned, proposed this rule back in 2012. We took public comments. We revised the rule based on those public comments. We cleared it through the review process within our own department, and in May sent it over to OMB. So we're expecting that sometime in August we will get the rule back from OMB. Around the same time, or maybe a little sooner, we're planning a public meeting where we're going to talk. We'd like to engage the public in our plans to determine how to make these traditional products eligible, what criteria we should be using to determine innovation. And once those rules go into effect, probably around September, we'll begin to start including these products in our program, most notably in the label program. And that will include the wood products, other traditional products, as well as our complex assembly products. And by the complex assembly products, I'm talking about things that are made up of a number of individual components. And these are things that, because they're made up of multiple components, cannot be tested for biobased content in the same way that simple products. Kind of an example would be the chairs that the seats you're sitting in. You see they have different things made up of components. So we've come up in our rule with a way to calculate the bio-based content based on the individual contents of the particular components. So over the second step, the second phase of proposing rules, you see we have laid out here a time frame that's actually going to take well over a year. And I've displayed here the number of steps that we go through in rulemaking, from proposing rules, taking public comment, and then finalizing those rules and publishing them. In each of those steps along the way, we have to have rules reviewed by various affected offices within the Department of Agriculture and from the Office of Management and Budget. And unfortunately, that takes a while, but we hope that by the summer of next year, we'll be in business with those new rules. So this gives you kind of a summary timetable. Because of the program guidelines going into effect this fall, we will be able to begin implementing most of the parts of the program, and then next summer we'll be able to move a little further. Let me talk briefly about some of the other provisions that are new with the 2014 Farm Bill and the Bio-Based Markets Program. Some of these are actually brand new, and others are things that were underway previously. That, in fact, a couple of them were in the 2008 Farm Bill, and what Congress sometimes does when federal agencies don't implement things quickly enough and the bill gets reauthorized, they remind us to do those and put a time deadline in. So that's happened in a couple of cases here. The first requirement here, the targeted bio-based only procurement requirements, excuse me, is a brand new requirement. This will require each of the federal agencies to set aside a certain number of procurements as being bio-based only. That's something that we will work out the details for in our rulemaking process, and that requirement then, because it's new and subject to rulemaking, won't go into effect till next summer. The reporting requirement is one of those gentle reminders from Congress that we have some things to do. This is a provision, however, that we did implement last year, and it requires that our federal contractors report annually on the amount of bio-based products they purchase. This is an important provision. It's our first real measure of how well the program's working in hard dollars. Unfortunately, when this requirement kicked in last October, it coincided with the partial government shutdown, and we didn't get a good reporting result. So that requirement will kick in again for the current fiscal year. This October, we're hoping for a much better result. The next item, designation of intermediate chemicals and complex assembly products. This is one that was in the designation of intermediates was in the 2008 Farm Bill. The complex products is something that wasn't explicitly in the 2008 Farm Bill, but it's something that we recognize as a need. And so both of these are addressed in that rule that we're hoping will become final this September. And we'll begin that designation process come September. The next requirement on auditing and compliance with the label program, again, this is something that isn't a new requirement legislatively, but it's something that we've been planning and undertaking almost since we started the labeling program. We recognized that there was a need to check the system and see how we were doing to make sure that we could preserve the integrity of our labeling program. So that is underway and will continue. When Kate talked about the stormy weather yesterday, our program is certainly subject to the stormy weather and had some stops and starts, but we're up and running with that now as well. mentioned the labeling complex assembly products. That is a new mandate, but again, we will be able to get that one going this fall. The last provision that's new is an economic impact study, and this is one that was actually a new legislative requirement, but one that was included in President Obama's presidential memorandum in 2012. So unfortunately, because of some of those funding limitations, didn't get that one started when the president asked us to, but we are actively preparing to get that study done right now.
As a matter of fact, Jeff, today there should be a notice, a request for information going out that announces the study is going to be done, so that'll be publications to that request for information. People who want to participate.
That'll be in the Federal Business Opportunities publication.
I don't know, are we allowed to ask questions now, or are we at the...
No.
Never mind.
Actually, the timing is perfect because that's in our last slide. So
See, I knew that, I just knew that.
I really meant yes. We'd be delighted to entertain questions.
The top item there, the targeted bio-based only thing, now for, as Ron said, the mandatory, for the USDA designated listed items, they have to be buying them only already. So how is that different?
It's not. It's just more emphasis. It's
Okay.
what it comes down to. This sets up a pilot, or at least some things we're going to do directly with agencies where they set goals inside their agencies. And this was something that some of our friends wanted to put in the legislation, and we did not oppose it. How it's going to work, I don't know. We'll see.
Basically, we're going to propose